Welcome to This Weekend Sonar. Zach, this is our first time that we've been together doing this show right after COVID, right after the quarantine. It's fun because we're right next to each other. So there's no 6 feet separating us today.
It's kind of like everything's come full circle now, except a little bit more extreme.
We are quite close. I think the last time we've probably been this close was back in high school. When we used to camp out in the fields.
No, it's a total reversal of a trend here.
So, Zach, let's talk a big release this week that's come out. We've done a couple of releases over the last couple of weeks, really getting back that fast cadence and new releases. But tell us a little bit about this particular release.
Yeah, so the summary view came out in opportunity view. So we have actually 2 new views inside of the SCI, Supply Chain Intelligence platform, where now, we released Supply Chain Intelligence, which has all the benchmarking, market analytics, et cetera, at a granular level in each lane. Now we compress all of that into a couple of pages to where you can get a quick overview of where am I spending too much, where am I spending too little potentially, where am I at risk? And it just combines all of this and gives you a couple of decisions to make with high-level data.
So Zach, where would somebody use that in the market? Is it ideal for a broker? Is it ideal for a shipper, a carrier? Who is the ideal audience for this particular set of indices?
Yeah, I think the shippers, for sure, the ideal audience, but obviously brokers have a use case here as well as they manage a ton of freight spend. Just finding where those lanes are that you may need to tamp down a little bit, or some of those lanes where you might need to spend a little bit more to ensure that you have the optimal compliance level. I do think there is also a use case for carriers here. I mean, having been a carrier pricing analyst myself, I actually find it extremely useful to know where maybe our exposure, our network exposure, is a little bit disconnected from the rest of the market.
So in terms of just when you say network exposure, can you define what you mean by that?
So say, in a lane such as like a Florida to Atlanta, which is tremendously backhaul driven, you have a lot of freight going into Florida, not a lot coming out. Maybe I'm a carrier that has the opposite exposure. Maybe I have a ton of freight that I'm moving out of Florida, and I may not know that, and that's an extreme example, obviously.
So you may not know that you're uniquely positioned with outbound of Florida versus what the market's condition. Probably if that were the case, if we were actually a carrier that ran out of Florida, you're probably hauling flowers or refrigerated freight. And it's actually really good for the multimodal elements of it, because oftentimes people that run in specific types of modes or specific type of cargoes aren't aware of how the broader market operates. So refrigerated freight, like you look at Colorado has historically been a tough place as a dry-van carrier to go to because there's not a lot of freight outbound, but a refrigerated carrier may do quite well coming out of there. Knowing that market makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and we've actually talked to a lot of customers that, there's very niche markets inside of transportation. We kind of view it all in kind of aggregate, thinking that we know, Seattle, Los Angeles is always a very, shipper-centric lane, or Los Angeles to Seattle is a very carrier-centric lane where they have a lot of leverage. That's not always the case, especially when you get into some of these micro markets and niches. I mean, we've talked to people out there that they don't necessarily understand where they stand in relation to the rest of the market in the way that they're spending their money. You may be underspending because you have a very good relationship with a carrier. Maybe that carrier is also they're dependent on your business entirely as a huge market share, which puts you at risk if that carrier is not expanding their exposure in the marketplace.
Zach, one thing that just sort of popped in my head as well is that if you're doing an RFP, let's say it is a new set of lanes, if I've got an opportunity to bid on freight, one of the biggest risks as a carrier is understanding that if you take those lanes, how your ability to get those trucks back into your network, how that's going to impact you. So understanding if I run this scenario by bidding aggressively on this lane or winning this new piece of business from the customer as they've asked me to take it on, how is it going to impact my ability to load out of there? And I think for carriers that don't have significant nationwide scale, but maybe run in with a smaller footprint or run in more regional, thinking about expanding with their clients into different parts of the country, this tool can help them make those decisions, be informed without committing to the capacity before they do it.
Yeah, they're going to know like really quick what the market exposure is, what the TAM is in that market, for instance. So you're taking on a big account or a new account. You need to know what's going on in the converse, in the reciprocating lanes to get you back to those markets as well. And that's a huge part of carrier network balance. And not everybody, including myself, when I was back in the space doing this, I didn't fully understand. Okay, yes, we knew that the Northeast was relatively, consumer driven, consumption driven. But we didn't know necessarily how consumer driven it was. And maybe there were some spots up there that made more sense than others that would have allowed us to pull out a little bit quicker than the other markets.
Yeah, I would say, look, I want to bid, in this case, I want to bid on freight going to Allentown, Pennsylvania, around that Allentown spot, but not taking freight that goes to perhaps Western Pennsylvania if that were the market condition. So it's giving you that more informed view of market conditions. It's helping you make better decisions about what freight to accept and how to bid on freight. And because the market is constantly changing with so many dynamics, particularly in a post-COVID world, post-quarantine world, is knowing what's happening right now becomes really, really important. And this tool can do it. Not to mention that there are some really awesome and badass visual tools built into this. It's really beautiful. When I look at it, I was like, wow, this is pretty impressive, seeing how the new tree map looks and how the new lane by lane visualization layers can really make it powerful as you start to examine the market and become more in tune with what's happening right now. And as always, the data is the fastest data in the freight market. So getting that fresh view is really important if you want to stay competitive and you want to win as we move into the post-COVID world. Which we're back. There is no COVID here.
This is as close as we've been in 20 years.
This is as close as it will ever get. Trust me. So, Zach, it's great to see you again. Have a great. I don't know that we would see each other in person that much.
Yeah, maybe.
More
often than not now.
Anyways, have a great week. We'll be back on This Week in Sonar next week. Got some cool releases coming up. Just teasing that.